Welcome in, everyone. Today we're diving deep into Angela Duckworth's Grit.
Ooh, Grit, yeah.
Yeah. And, it's a book that's really made waves.
It has.
But we're going beyond just, pushing through tough stuff.
Right.
It's about how this idea, grit, can completely change your whole path to success.
I love that.
We'll be uncovering some really surprising things along the way.
Okay.
Like why talent alone doesn't guarantee you anything.
Interesting.
And how even those people, those superstars in their fields, they all started somewhere.
They did, yeah.
So what's so interesting about Duckworth is that she didn't begin her career in some, fancy research lab. She was a teacher.
Oh, wow.
And she noticed something really peculiar.
Oh.
The kids, everyone labeled as gifted, they didn't always end up as the high achievers.
Yeah, that makes you think.
It really does.
What's that missing ingredient?
Yeah, because we place so much emphasis on talent.
We do.
But her study at West Point really turned that idea on its head.
Okay, tell me about this.
So at West Point, she studied the Beast Barracks.
Beast Barracks, okay.
Which is basically their intense boot camp.
Right, boot camp, yeah.
So you'd naturally think,
yeah,
that physical fitness and, stellar test scores, those would be the things that...
The predictors.
Yeah, that would predict who thrives in that environment.
Yeah, you would think so.
But surprisingly, it was grit that really stood out.
Grit, so someone who maybe didn't have the top test scores.
Exactly.
But had that stick-with-itness, had an advantage.
Absolutely.
Wow.
So it really challenges that whole idea that we're born with this fixed amount of talent.
Right, and it shifts the focus to mindset, doesn't it? That belief in our ability to grow and improve.
Yeah, and Duckworth talks about a student she had named David Luong,
okay,
who really struggled with math. But he ended up excelling.
Wow. And
she attributes a lot of that to his mindset.
So our beliefs about what we're capable of can actually hold us back.
It's incredible.
If you believe your abilities are fixed, you're less likely to push yourself when things get tough.
That's true.
But if you have a growth mindset, challenges become opportunities to learn.
Yeah.
And that's where effort comes in.
Okay.
Duckworth argues that effort counts twice.
Effort counts twice?
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
What does she mean by that?
So talent matters, but it's the multiplier effect of effort that's key.
I see.
She uses this analogy from a study done at Harvard in the 1940s called the treadmill test.
The treadmill test.
They had people run on treadmills at an incline and measured how long they could keep going.
Okay, and what did they find?
So it wasn't actually the initial ability, how fit someone was at the start.
Right.
That predicted long-term well-being. It was persistence.
Oh, interesting.
Those who stayed on the treadmill longer, even if they weren't the fastest or strongest, they tended to be healthier and more successful in life.
Wow. So it's not about those, bursts of effort, but about the long game.
Exactly. It's the marathon, not the sprint.
The marathon, not the sprint.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
So how do we cultivate this grit? What are the ingredients?
Well, Duckworth breaks grit down into two core components, passion and perseverance.
Okay.
Passion being that deep long-term commitment to a goal.
Okay.
And perseverance, that ability to push through setbacks, to keep going even when it's tough.
Passion and perseverance. I can see how those two work together.
They do.
Do you have any real-world examples of this?
Yeah, think about Jeffrey Gettleman.
Right.
He's a Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist. He had this unwavering passion for reporting, even putting himself in dangerous situations to get the story.
Wow.
But it was his perseverance, his refusal to give up, that led to his incredible career.
So he had that North Star, that passion
Yes.
and the grit to navigate the storms along the way.
Exactly.
But how do you even find that North Star in the first place?
Right, that's the million-dollar question.
Yeah.
It's not always some earth-shattering epiphany. Sometimes it's about starting with something that interests you.
Okay.
And then digging deeper. Duckworth talks about Warren Buffett's approach to setting goals.
Well, yeah.
He focuses on his top 5 and ignores everything else.
So it's about prioritizing.
Exactly.
Focusing your energy on the things that matter most.
Yes, and this is where deliberate practice comes in.
Okay.
It's not just about putting in the hours. It's about practicing with intention.
Right.
Pushing yourself beyond your comfort zone. Think about competitive spelling bees.
Oh, yeah, those kids are intense.
Right. They're not just memorizing lists of words. They're using strategies, breaking words down, understanding their origins.
So they're really engaging with the material.
Exactly. Not just going through the motions.
Right.
And when we practice like that, something really cool can happen. It's called a flow state.
Okay, the flow state.
Yeah, it's that feeling of being in the zone, totally absorbed in what you're doing. Time just melts away.
I love that.
Imagine an orchestra conductor completely immersed in the music, leading the orchestra to a breathtaking performance.
Wow, that's such a vivid image.
It is.
So this flow state is being so engrossed that it feels effortless.
Exactly, a state of heightened focus and performance.
That's amazing.
And while it can be fleeting, deliberate practice makes it more likely to occur.
So we've got interest, we've got deliberate practice. Where does purpose fit into all this?
Yeah, purpose.
Yeah, it feels like another key ingredient in the grit recipe.
Absolutely. Duckworth found that gritty individuals are often driven by a deep sense of purpose.
Okay.
They believe that their work contributes to something larger than themselves.
So it's not just about personal gain.
No, it's about making a difference in the world.
Okay, so for some people that purpose is clear, right? Like a doctor who's passionate about saving lives.
Right.
But what about the rest of us? How do we find that sense of purpose in maybe less dramatic fields?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
Think of Kat Cole. She rose from poverty to become president of a major bakery chain. Her purpose wasn't just about baking. It was about using her success to help others.
So it's about finding that connection between our everyday work and a larger mission.
Exactly. Finding that why. That fuels your passion and perseverance.
Okay. This is all making a lot of sense.
Yeah.
But we can't talk about grit without talking about setbacks.
Right. The inevitable.
Yeah. Those moments when we face challenges, failures, rejections. How do we handle those in a way that builds grit?
That's where optimism comes in.
Okay.
Duckworth found that gritty individuals tend to have a more optimistic outlook. They see setbacks as temporary, specific to the situation, and not a reflection of their overall worth.
So it's all about how we interpret those setbacks, how we frame them in our minds.
Exactly.
Instead of saying, I'm a failure, I'll never be good at this.
Right.
They might say, okay, this didn't go as planned. What can I learn from this?
Yes.
How can I do better next time?
Exactly. It's that growth mindset applied to challenges.
Yeah.
And there's this fascinating study with elite swimmers.
Oh, tell me about this.
They were deliberately told they had done poorly, even when they hadn't.
Wow, that's rough.
It is.
What?
The optimistic swimmers actually performed better the second time around. They used that feedback, even though it was false, as motivation to improve.
Wow.
They saw it as a challenge, not a defeat.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
It shows how powerful our mindset can be.
Absolutely.
Choosing to see setbacks as opportunities rather than roadblocks.
Exactly. And Duckworth doesn't just focus on the individual.
Right.
She also looks at the role of environment in shaping grit.
Yeah, like our upbringing, our culture.
Exactly. And one of the most impactful environmental factors is parenting.
Right.
She introduces this concept of wise parenting.
Okay, wise parenting.
Which strikes a balance between high expectations and warmth and support.
So it's not about being a drill sergeant.
No.
Pushing your kids relentlessly.
It's about setting high standards, but also providing the love and encouragement
I see.
they need to reach those standards.
So creating an environment where kids feel challenged, but also safe, loved, and supported.
Precisely. Think of Steve Young, the Hall of Fame quarterback.
Oh, yeah.
His parents were demanding but also incredibly loving. They instilled a strong work ethic.
Right.
But they also celebrated his successes and supported him through failures.
So that's that balance that's so important.
It is.
But what about those of us who didn't grow up with wise parents?
Right.
Does that mean we're doomed to be less gritty?
Not at all. Remember the story of Cody Coleman?
Yeah.
He lacked a supportive family environment, but he found guidance and inspiration from his brother and a dedicated teacher.
So even without the ideal upbringing, we can still find the support we need.
Absolutely. Positive role models can come from anywhere. Teachers, coaches, mentors, even friends and siblings.
That's encouraging.
Yeah.
And it's not just individuals and families. Duckworth also explores the role of culture.
Oh, yes, culture.
In shaping grit, she talks about sisu,
Sisu.
which is this Finnish word that embodies resilience and determination in the face of adversity.
Wow, so it's like a cultural grit.
Yeah.
An attitude of perseverance ingrained in their culture.
It's like that saying, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger.
Yeah.
But taken to a whole new level.
Exactly. And while we might not all be Finnish,
Right.
we can still learn from their example.
Absolutely.
Think about Pete Carroll, the coach of the Seattle Seahawks.
Oh, yeah.
He's intentionally built a culture of grit within his team.
And they've seen success.
They have.
So it's not just about individual grit. It's about creating a culture of grit.
Exactly. Yeah. In our families, our teams, our organizations.
It's fascinating, isn't it?
It is.
That grit is not this, innate quality you either have or you don't.
Right.
It's something that can be cultivated, nurtured, and even shared.
I love that.
It's about creating an environment where effort, perseverance, and a growth mindset are valued and rewarded.
Absolutely.
Okay, wow, so much to unpack there.
Right.
We've gone from West Point to treadmills to Finland.
It's quite a journey.
It is fascinating, but it's a lot.
Yeah.
How does someone even begin to cultivate more grit in their own life?
That's the question, isn't it?
It feels like a massive undertaking.
It can feel that way. Yeah, especially when you look at people like Kat Cole or Jeffrey Gettleman.
Right, these amazing achievers.
But remember, they started somewhere. Yeah. No one is born with, a full tank of grit.
That's true.
It's something you build over time. Okay. And that journey starts with a single step.
So where would you suggest our listener begins?
Well, it goes back to what we were talking about with interest and passion.
Right.
Those aren't always things you just stumble upon.
Right.
Sometimes you have to actively cultivate them.
Like that saying, passion is not a job, it's a compass.
Exactly. And even Will Shortz.
Oh, yeah. The crossword puzzle guy.
Yeah. He didn't start by, creating masterpieces.
Right.
He was fascinated by puzzles as a kid. Started crafting his own. He even sold them, I think, when he was like 14 years old. It wasn't glamorous, but it was the beginning of his journey.
So step one is to explore, to dabble in different things.
Exactly.
See what sparks our curiosity.
Yeah, give yourself permission to be a beginner.
Yeah.
To try things out, to be bad at them initially.
Right.
You never know where those early explorations might lead.
And once we find something that piques our interest, how do we go from dabbling to developing a true passion?
That's where the magic of deliberate practice comes in.
Okay.
But remember, it's not just about mindless repetition.
Right.
Duckworth found that the most effective practice is focused and intentional.
Right.
Think back to the competitive spelling example.
Oh, yeah. Those kids are like Olympians.
Right, exactly.
They train so hard.
They do. And their practice isn't just about memorizing lists of words. The most successful spellers dive deep understanding word origins, breaking words down into their components, targeting their weaknesses.
So it's about engaging with the material in a strategic way.
Exactly. Not just going through the motions.
Right.
And that kind of focused effort is what separates those who dabble from those who truly master their craft.
I see.
It's what allows you to move beyond the beginner stage and develop real expertise.
But I imagine that kind of practice can feel pretty grueling at times.
It can.
Where's the fun in all that drilling and repetition?
Well, that's where the flow state comes in.
Oh, right, the flow state.
Remember, it's that feeling of being in the zone, totally absorbed in a challenging task, where time seems to fly by and effort feels effortless.
Like those athletes that make it look so easy.
Exactly. And while deliberate practice can be demanding,
right,
it also creates the conditions for those flow state experiences.
I see.
It's about finding that sweet spot between challenge and skill.
So it's finding that Goldilocks zone.
Yes.
Not too hard, not too easy, but just right.
Exactly. And that's where having a good coach or mentor can be invaluable. They can help you identify your weaknesses, push you beyond your comfort zone, provide feedback that helps you improve.
It's like having a guide on your grit journey. Someone to help you navigate the terrain.
Exactly.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit and talk about purpose.
Okay, purpose.
We touched on this earlier.
We did.
But I think it deserves a deeper dive.
Okay, I like it.
How do we help our listener connect their efforts to something bigger?
This is where reflection is key.
Okay.
What truly matters to you? What impact do you want to make on the world?
Right.
Think about Kat Cole again.
Yeah.
Her purpose wasn't just about building a successful career. It was about using her platform to help others.
To give back.
Exactly, to create opportunities for those who hadn't had her advantages.
So it's about finding that intersection between our passions and our values.
Yeah.
A way to make our work meaningful beyond just personal gain.
Exactly, and it doesn't have to be about grand, world-changing missions.
Right.
Even seemingly small actions can be infused with purpose.
Okay.
If you link them to a larger goal.
So instead of just, cleaning the house,
right,
it becomes creating a peaceful and welcoming space for my family.
Exactly. It's about that mindset shift.
I love that.
About finding the why behind the what.
Yeah.
And even mundane tasks can feel more meaningful.
Absolutely.
When you connect them to a larger purpose.
Okay. But we can't talk about grit without addressing the elephant in the room.
Oh, the elephant setbacks.
Setbacks, yeah.
They're inevitable. They're part of the journey.
How do we deal with them in a way that builds grit?
That's where optimism and a growth mindset come into play.
Okay.
Remember, gritty individuals tend to view setbacks as temporary.
Right.
Specific to the situation and not a reflection of their overall worth.
Right. They don't catastrophize.
Exactly.
They don't let one failure define them.
Exactly. And this optimistic outlook isn't something you're necessarily born with.
Okay.
It can be learned and cultivated.
How?
Remember Martin Seligman's research on learned optimism?
Oh, yeah.
He found that optimists tend to explain negative events in a specific way.
Right. They see them as temporary, isolated incidents, not a sign that everything is doomed.
Exactly. And by consciously adopting this optimistic, explanatory style, we can start to reframe setbacks as challenges to overcome.
So instead of saying, I'm a failure, I'll never be good at this, we might say, okay, this didn't go as planned, but what can I learn from it? How can I adjust my approach?
Exactly. And that's where the growth mindset comes in.
Yeah.
That belief that our abilities aren't fixed, that we can learn and improve with effort.
So setbacks become opportunities to develop our skills.
Yes.
To get better, to grow.
Precisely. And this combination of optimism and a growth mindset is incredibly powerful.
Yeah.
It allows you to face challenges head on, knowing that you have the capacity to learn and grow from them.
Okay. This is all starting to click for me.
Good.
But Duckworth doesn't just focus on the individual, right?
No,
He also explores the role of environment in shaping grit.
Absolutely. And one of the most impactful environmental factors is parenting.
Right.
Specifically what she calls wise parenting.
Right. We talked about that earlier.
We did.
Striking that balance between high expectations and warmth and support.
Exactly. Wise parents set high standards for their children.
Right.
But they also provide the love, encouragement, and support those children need to reach those standards.
Think back to Steve Young and his parents.
Yes.
They were demanding, but also incredibly loving.
Yes, they were.
They pushed him to excel, but also celebrated his successes.
And helped him navigate his failures.
Exactly.
And that combination of high expectations and loving support creates an environment where children feel both challenged and safe.
Right.
Which is a perfect breeding ground for grit.
But what about those of us who didn't grow up with wise parents?
Right.
Does that mean we're destined to be less gritty?
Not at all. Remember the story of Cody Coleman?
Yes.
He didn't have the advantage of wise parents.
He didn't.
But he found those positive role models in other people.
Okay.
His brother, a dedicated teacher, even his peers.
It's a powerful reminder that we can find mentors and sources of inspiration outside of our families. We're not limited by our upbringing.
We're not.
And it's not just about individuals. Culture also plays a role in shaping grit.
Oh, yes. Culture. Huge.
Remember the concept of sisu?
Sisu, yes.
That Finnish spirit of resilience and determination.
Exactly. It's like a collective grit and attitude of perseverance that's ingrained in their culture.
Yeah.
And while we might not all be Finnish,
right,
we can still learn from their example.
Absolutely. Think of Pete Carroll and the Seattle Seahawks.
Yes, great example.
He's intentionally built a culture of grit within his team.
He has, and what's interesting is that he's achieved this not through some top-down authoritarian approach, but through shared values and practices.
I see.
He's created an environment where players feel empowered to push their limits and support each other through challenges.
So it's not just about individual grit, it's about creating a culture of grit.
Exactly, in our families, our teams, our organizations.
And that's a powerful takeaway.
It is.
It means that grit is not some fixed trait that you either have or you don't. It's a set of skills and habits that can be learned, cultivated, and even shared.
I love that.
It's about creating an environment where effort, perseverance, and a growth mindset are valued and rewarded.
Absolutely. This has been such an eye-opening conversation.
Yes.
It feels like we've gone beyond just understanding grit.
We have.
To actually developing a roadmap for cultivating it in our own lives.
And that's what makes this exploration so rewarding.
Yes.
It's not just about accumulating knowledge.
No.
It's about empowering people to take action to reach their full potential.
Exactly. So as we wrap up this part of our deep dive, what's one key takeaway you'd like to leave our listener with?
Well, I think the most important message is that grit is not about being superhuman.
Right.
Or never giving up.
It's not about perfection.
It's about making a conscious choice to commit to something you care about.
Yes.
To persevere through challenges.
Yes.
And to embrace the journey of growth and learning.
Exactly.
It's about believing in your own potential.
Yes.
And then putting in the effort to make that potential a reality.
Beautifully said.
Okay, so we've covered a ton of ground in our deep dive into grit.
We have.
We've explored the research, we've heard inspiring stories.
Yeah.
And we've even started to think about how we can cultivate more of this grit in our own lives.
Yeah.
But I want to get even more practical here.
Okay.
If our listener is ready to take action, where do they begin?
Yeah, where do we start?
What are some tangible steps that they can take to actually put this grit into practice?
Well, Duckworth actually gives us a really helpful framework for this.
Okay.
She breaks it down into 4 key areas.
Okay.
Interest, practice, purpose, and hope.
I like it.
We've touched on all of these.
We have.
But let's kind of revisit them with that action-oriented lens you were talking about.
Yeah, let's get tactical.
Let's get tactical.
Let's start with interest.
Okay.
We talked about how passions are often developed, not just discovered.
Right.
But what if someone feels stuck, like they've lost that spark? How do they rekindle that interest?
Right.
Or maybe even find new ones?
That's where a little bit experimentation comes in.
Okay.
Remember giving yourself permission to be a beginner.
Right.
To try things out without the pressure of being good right away.
Yeah.
Think back to Will Shortz and his early crossword puzzles.
Right.
They probably weren't masterpieces at first.
Probably not.
But they were a starting point, a way to explore his passion.
So it's about getting curious, trying new things, seeing what sticks.
Exactly. And it doesn't have to be this huge time commitment.
Right.
Take a class, read a book, volunteer for a new project at work.
I like it.
Just expose yourself to different experiences and see what sparks your interest.
And if something doesn't resonate, that's okay too.
Exactly. It's all part of the process of discovery.
I love that it takes the pressure off.
Yeah.
It's not about finding that one true calling right away.
Right.
It's about exploring.
Yes.
And allowing yourself to evolve.
Yeah, absolutely.
But once you've found something that sparks that interest, how do you go from dabbling to developing real mastery?
That's where deliberate practice comes in.
Right.
But remember, deliberate practice isn't just about putting in the hours. It's about practicing with intention.
Okay.
Pushing yourself beyond your comfort zone.
Right.
Seeking out feedback.
So having a plan, setting goals.
Yes.
Pushing yourself to improve even when it's uncomfortable.
Exactly. And this is where having a coach or mentor can be incredibly helpful.
Yeah. Having someone to guide you.
Yes. They can provide guidance, support, accountability.
Keep you on track.
Help you stay focused and motivated on your grit journey.
It's like having a personal trainer for your grit muscles.
I like that.
Okay. Let's shift gears a bit and talk about purpose.
Okay. Purpose.
We've discussed how connecting our work to a larger mission can really fuel our grit.
Yes.
But how do we actually do that?
Yeah.
How do we find that sense of purpose in our everyday lives?
That's a great question, and it's not always easy.
Right.
Especially if you're in a job that doesn't feel inherently meaningful.
Yeah, a lot of people can relate to that.
Right. But remember, purpose doesn't have to be about those grand, world-changing gestures.
Right.
It can be about the small, everyday ways you make a difference.
Okay, so how do we find that purpose in the seemingly mundane?
It starts with reflecting on your values.
Okay.
What's important to you? What kind of impact do you want to have on the world?
Yeah.
Once you have a clearer sense of your values, you can start to look for ways to align your actions with those values.
Can you give us an example?
Sure. Let's say you value kindness and helping others.
Okay.
Maybe you can't change your job overnight.
Right.
But you can look for ways to incorporate those values into your daily work.
I see.
Maybe you mentor a new employee.
Wrong.
Volunteer for a project that benefits your community.
Yeah.
Or simply make an effort to be more supportive and encouraging to your colleagues.
Right. Just small acts of kindness.
Exactly. It's about finding those small, everyday ways to make a difference.
Yeah.
Even if your job title doesn't scream world changer.
I love that.
And it's amazing how those small acts of purpose can add up over time.
Yeah.
They can not only make you feel more fulfilled in your work, but also inspire those around you to do the same.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've covered interest, practice, and purpose.
Yes.
Now let's tackle the final piece of Duckworth's framework.
Okay.
Hope. We've talked about the importance of optimism in dealing with those setbacks.
Right.
But how do we cultivate that optimism,
Yeah.
especially when things get really tough?
This is where the power of self-talk comes in.
Okay.
The way we talk to ourselves, especially during challenging times, can have a huge impact on our outlook and our resilience.
Right. Our inner voice can either be our biggest cheerleader or our harshest critic.
Exactly. So start by paying attention to your self-talk.
Okay.
When you hit a roadblock, do you catastrophize? Telling yourself, I'm a failure, I'll never figure this out.
Right.
Or do you look for ways to learn and adapt, saying, okay, this is tough, but I'm going to keep trying. I'll figure it out eventually.
It's about choosing to be your own advocate.
Yes.
Your own source of support.
Exactly. And if you find yourself spiraling into negativity, try reframing the situation.
Okay.
Instead of focusing on what went wrong, ask yourself, what can I learn from this? How can I use this experience to grow and improve?
It's shifting from a fixed mindset to a growth mindset.
Precisely.
Even in the face of setbacks.
And remember, optimism is a skill that can be developed with practice.
That's encouraging.
Yeah. The more you consciously choose to focus on the positive, to look for solutions, and to reframe challenges as opportunities, the more optimistic you'll become.
This has been such an incredible deep dive.
It has.
I feel like we've gone beyond just understanding grit to actually developing a toolkit.
Yeah.
For cultivating it in our own lives.
I love that.
But before we wrap up, is there one final provocative thought?
Oh, a final thought that you'd like to leave our listener with.
Something to ponder.
If talent isn't everything, what hard thing are you willing to commit to even when it gets tough?
Wow, that's a powerful question.
It is.
It challenges us to really step outside of our comfort zones.
Yes.
To embrace this struggle and to believe in our capacity for growth.
Absolutely.
And on that note, we'll wrap up this deep dive into grit. Thank you all for joining us on this journey of exploration and discovery. Remember, it's not just about understanding grit. It's about putting it into practice. So go out there, embrace the challenge, and never stop believing in your own potential.